Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we got a fun little video for you. It's a slightly different take on the Gyre loadout I showcased back when Angels first dropped. This time we're looking at an oldie, Sevagoth. It's a very simple synergy with this kit that we originally tried over a year ago. Now with the advent of Focus 3.0, we can finally make it work. This is a basic Reap and Sow Sevagoth using his 1 and 2 together to kill enemies quickly and efficiently. I want to point out this build does not have enough KPM standalone to be viable as your main source of kills on Steel Path, even just base Steel Path survival. It sits around 70 to 80 KPM and requires life support towers to sustain, but it's funny, eats your FPS, and comfy to play once you get the hang of it. Simply put, your 2 so marks enemies in a wide area to drain some health, but what's important is casting your 1 on enemies affected by your 2 will detonate them. Hitting enemies with your 1 does radiation damage, and the resulting detonation synergy does 25% of the target's health as blast damage in a 4-meter AoE. Because it's blast damage, it's affected by armor scaling, and thus we need armor strip to make it effective. This is where Unairu 3.0 comes in. We have access to Caustic Strike, your operator's 2 ability that launches an energy bomb full stripping enemies in an 8-meter radius. You can detonate it early by pressing 2 again. Sevagoth needs a proper grouping skill to take advantage of this armor strip, and so I went with Airburst. You can alternatively go with Coil Horizon, Gyre's Helminth, which has more electric shock CC and more suck range. It has some weird physics that might take a while for you to get used to, but I was just going with an already existing Helminth config. And Snare works too, but just keep in mind you can only cast it on where enemies already are instead of anywhere, like Airburst, Coil Horizon, and Larva can. Caustic Strike has an 8-meter radius that full strips. It's a much wider area than how tightly you suck up enemies, so it ensures everything you blow up with Reap and Sow won't have armor. Once they are stripped, they drop like flies from 2 or 3 casts of your 1. Now, make sure they are marked first though. This is important because your 1 literally does no damage without your 2. Another interesting fact is your 2 has a set duration, and if any enemy is still affected by it, you cannot recast it. Only enemies affected by your 2 can explode. So what happens if some faraway enemies still have the 2 active after you've killed a bunch? Well, let's take a look at that Sevagoth build, shall we? While I do have Prime Sure-Footed on this build, in theory you actually don't need it because of how often we'll be going in and out of Operator to proc Caustic Strike and strip armor off. This will constantly trigger Poise, an Operator passive node that grants both the Frame and Operator immunity to slow, stagger, and knockdown for 40 seconds after transference. This might as well be permanent since you will be transferring every 5 or 10 seconds and the buff is refreshable. Plus, DE did say the transfer delay was unintentional, so maybe it'll get patched in the near future.
Clarifying that there's no intentional cooldown, but we need to go a lot deeper to just make it more responsive.
Anyways, that's Sevagoth. Remember how I said you can't recast your 2 if anything is still affected by it? This is my answer. Tanking duration. If you can't kill them all, just let the effect wear off and then you'll be able to cast it again. 38% duration is enough for his 2 to last 3.8 seconds, which should be enough to run the full rotation. This actually resulted in this really weird build using a rank 8 transient fortitude. This is because the build is really spammy, so you need a fair amount of efficiency to sustain it, but I also needed to dump duration, so I couldn't run a maxed fleeting expertise. However, 140% efficiency is still enough. With our equilibrium synergy I'll explain later, and it also makes our Airburst, our main shield gating ability or Coil Horizon, cost 30 energy. With Brief Respite and 2 Augur Mons on our Epitaph, the only weapon that really matters today, you have 230 energy to shield conversion. Casting your Airburst will regenerate 69. Nice. Shields, just enough to top you all the way back up to full for that juicy 1.3 seconds shield gate. Rolling Guard as a safety to get rid of pesky dots, as well as safe for shield gating, but with how often you will be casting Airburst, your 1 and 2, you stay reasonably safe with a constantly refreshing shield gate even if enemies are shooting you. I slapped Natural Talent on the build despite all 3 of these abilities being one-handed because when I was testing, I still had numerous moments where I couldn't cast Airburst again, or my 2 on time after Airburst, because these are not 0 animation cast abilities. The playstyle is very fast and spammy, so it was basically required when I was trying it out. Overextended gets us out to 235 range, which is really useful for our suck, be it Airburst at 18.8 meter radius or Coil Horizon at 28.2 meter radius, which honestly is pretty gigantic and I'd recommend that instead. It gives our 2 a 37.6 radial debuff, but keep in mind it does not affect the 4 meter explosion radius of our 1 when we cast it on enemies affected by our 2. Just keep in mind, you need to double tap Coil Horizon to activate the suck before 2 seconds, whereas Airburst only needs a single tap. The choice is yours, Tenno. If you're wondering why I chose to subsume over his 3, Gloom, well, his Shadow form is still fun to play and useful if you want to try it. And we need his 1 and 2 for this build to work. Velocity lets us spam our epitaph faster to prime sooner, since all we care about are viral procs to buff our 1's damage. Otherwise, it's just bonus status effects to CC enemies. With how many you hit, even epitaph with shit CC will still get the occasional crit to proc this arcane easily. Energize is pretty self-explanatory in a spammy build like this, and fills up almost the entire bar every proc. Now, Equilibrium. This is a synergy with our companion today, Panzer. You may be wondering why people always bring Panzers instead of other Vulpaphylas, if the only thing unique about Panzer is viral quills, but that's the thing. Viral quills is unique because it produces spores similar to Sarin, that naturally spread across the room to proc viral. Anything tagged by these spores is considered a pet assist. No other Vulpaphyla can naturally spread its attack across the room like this. Every pet tagged can activate Synth Deconstruct, and because viral quills tags the entire room, this 25% chance to drop health orbs on pet assists becomes more like all enemies in general have a 25% chance to drop health orbs. You'll always be able to pick them up because that's what Synth Fiber lets you do, and thus we turn it into energy with Equilibrium. Basically, every 4 enemies you kill will drop a health orb, and that 25 health becomes 30 energy. Infinite sustain, am I right? And then you have the rest of your Panzer's kit. Martyr is a 0.25 second health gate if you screw up, but it does kill your cat, which is why we have Devolution to give it infinite lives. In fact, Attack Assault blocks fatal hits to your cat 60% of the time, and includes suicides caused by Martyr. So if you're lucky, Martyr can activate several times in a row without killing your cats. Then the usual radar and vacuum. Oh, and one last thing, if you die in Sevagoth that spits out the shadow, you need to tag 5 enemies with your 2 to revive yourself. It's a guaranteed kill on normal mobs, but for some reason doesn't seem to work properly against Xmas units, so watch out for that. But because it spits out your shadow, it will take the mods from your shadow form, so I built it like this. This is a generic shadow form if you want to use it for endurance, but the important parts here are preparation and rolling guard. Preparation activates every time you spawn a shadow, whether due to downing or voluntarily, meaning his shadow will always spawn with full energy for abilities. Rolling guard is important obviously, but also because it can proc when you're in the down state and forced into your shadow. This gives you precious extra seconds to land those 5 kills with your 2 so that you can revive yourself safely. If you want an actual explanation on using his shadow and claws, I'd recommend you to check out my original Sevagoth video I made last year at the top right. While the weapon loadouts and stuff may be outdated, though frame builds are still relevant, as well as the explanations on why I made them such, as well as his claws. So what do? Simple. Cast your 2 when you can, or if it wears off. Besides that, cast your Airburst or Coil Horizon at some enemies. When they get sucked in, spam your Epitaph. Actually, just spam your Epitaph in general. It will also help you survive since I'm using this build. A viral radiation epitaph. The radiation turns on friendly fire aggro so they shoot you less, viral to prime for that big dick DPS, and the built-in blast and cold to reduce accuracy and slow their fire. But yeah, spam epitaph at your airburst or coil. Go to operator, press your 2 and aim at the clump. Then press E to get back to your frame faster and spam your 1 2 or 3 times. They should be dead. This doesn't seem to work as well against shielded enemies, so I recommend still bringing a proper melee. I brought my Praetos for the 30% parkour bonus, however it does have an actual DPS build on it too. If you want a proper breakdown of Praetos, I also have a video for that you can check out at the top right, and also bring something for the Acolyte, as your primary slot is open and you're going to be using Amalgam Serration for sprint speed anyways. The 2+1 combo on Sevagoth's kit doesn't work well against them, though Unairu's Caustic Strike does full strip Acolytes instantly as well. And there you go. The fun little Sevagoth build I've always been asked to make last year. We finally have a way to make it work. Sort of. I wouldn't recommend using this on anything higher than base steel path because the aggressiveness of Xmas units that ignore airburst and coil, and thus don't get stripped by Unairu aimed at the clump, causes them to pose a significant threat to this playstyle. It can work, but just be careful of them. Have fun! If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like, or better yet subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to get you new information out always as soon as possible, like I've done with covering the new Angels of Zariman update. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. Don't want to miss out on any of that, do you? That'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.